I am Leila Monroe, 35 years old, and until last month, I thought I knew what loyalty meant. For 10 years, I tried to be the perfect wife to Martin Ray and the ideal daughter-in-law to his family. I baked Franklin Doyle his favorite pies. I attended charity galas with Joanne Pierce. I even tolerated Sandra Knox and her snippy comments. But none of that mattered when my sister-in-law slammed those photos on the anniversary dinner table. My blood ran cold as Martin Ray refused to meet my eyes. 10 years of family devotion shattered in seconds as my fingers trembled reaching for my purse. They had no idea what I was about to reveal. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had to deal with toxic in-laws. Trust me, you will want to see how this ends. Growing up in Des Moines, Iowa, I had a fairly normal middle-class childhood. My parents taught high school and we lived comfortably, if not luxuriously. I excelled in school, especially in writing and design, which eventually led me to pursue marketing in college. Northwestern University gave me the education, but my internships at several Chicago agencies gave me the real-world experience that shaped my career. I met Martin Ray at an industry conference in Dallas 12 years ago. He was there representing his family business, Hardcourt Manufacturing, and I was attending with the boutique agency I worked for at the time. We quite literally bumped into each other at the coffee station between sessions, and he helped me clean up my spilled latte with such earnest apologies that I couldn't help but find him charming. "Please let me replace it," he insisted, his blue eyes genuinely concerned about my caffeine deprivation. "Only if you sit with me while I drink it," I countered, surprising myself with my boldness. That coffee turned into dinner, which turned into breakfast the next morning. Leila Monroe stood in her sleek kitchen, fingers tracing the cool marble countertop. The city lights of Des Moines twinkled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm glow. But then, something caught her eye. A framed photograph half hidden behind a stack of unopened mail. Her heart raced as she recognized the faces. Martin, Franklin, Joanne, and Sandra. But one detail sent a chill down her spine. Martin stood arm in arm with a woman Leila had never seen before, grinning like she belonged. The air thickened around her. How could Martin, with his charming smile, hide such a secret? Suddenly, every conversation they'd shared took on a new, unsettling shade. Leila had devoted a decade to being the perfect wife, the ideal daughter-in-law. She baked Franklin's favorite pies, attended hospital fundraisers with Joanne, and even tolerated Sandra's snippy remarks. But none of that mattered when Sandra slammed those photos on the anniversary dinner table. Leila's blood ran cold as Martin refused to meet her gaze. 10 years of loyalty crumbled in an instant. Her fingers trembled as she reached for her purse, ready to reveal a truth that would shake their family to its core. Growing up in Des Moines, Leila had a typical middle-class childhood. Her parents were adult education instructors, and they lived comfortably. She excelled in school, especially in writing and design, which led her to marketing at Northwestern University. It was at an industry conference in Dallas where she met Martin. He was charming, funny, and genuinely interested in her thoughts. Their connection was instant, sparked over spilled coffee. By the end of that 3-day conference, they had exchanged numbers and made plans for him to visit her in Chicago. There was an ease between them that felt rare. But what Martin didn't reveal right away was that Hardcourt Manufacturing, his family business, was worth over $50 million. He was the sole male heir. Leila discovered this when he invited her to his loft in Chicago's Gold Coast. The doorman, the private elevator, and the stunning view of Lake Michigan were her first clues. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, feeling a pang of betrayal as she admired the original artwork on his walls. "People treat me differently when they know," he replied, looking genuinely uncomfortable. "I wanted you to know the real me first." Little did Leila know, this was just the beginning of a complicated relationship with Martin's family and their expectations. When she finally met the Harcourts, it was at their sprawling mansion in Lake Forest, complete with manicured gardens and luxury cars. The first dinner was intimidating. Franklin, a tall man with silver hair and piercing eyes, interrogated her about her background while barely touching his meal. As Leah navigated this world of wealth and tradition, she felt the weight of family loyalty pressing down on her. But the truth was lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to explode. Would Leah reclaim her dignity and reveal the secrets that threatened to tear them apart? Or would she remain trapped in a web of family expectations? The answer lay in the choices she would soon have to make. Joanne Pierce, perfectly coiffed and wearing pearls for a family dinner, smiled tightly as she corrected my table etiquette with subtle comments. Leila Monroe. "Dear, we use the outermost fork first," she murmured when I reached for the wrong utensil, "and red wine glasses have stems for a reason." Then there was Sandra Knox, Martin Ray's younger sister by 2 years. Where Martin Ray had inherited his father's height and mother's warm coloring, Sandra Knox was petite with cold blue eyes that assessed me like I was an item at auction she was considering bidding on. She had the same prestigious education as her brother, but unlike Martin Ray, who worked in the family business, Sandra Knox had never held a real job. Instead, she managed the family's social calendar and charitable foundation positions that gave her purpose without accountability. "So, you work in advertising?" she asked, making it sound like I sold snake oil door to door. "How fascinating. I suppose someone has to convince people to buy things they don't need." Martin Ray squeezed my hand under the table, his silent apology and encouragement. I smiled brightly and responded, "Actually, my specialty is helping sustainable brands connect with consumers who share their values. My last campaign helped a zero-waste company increase sales by 70% while reducing their carbon footprint." Franklin Doyle actually looked up at that, a flicker of respect crossing his features before he returned to his steak. It wasn't much, but it felt like a victory. Despite the chilly reception, Martin Ray and I continued to grow closer. 2 years into our relationship, he proposed during a weekend trip to Doe County, Wisconsin. The ring was his grandmother's, a stunning Art Deco piece that Joanne Pierce had apparently been saving for the right woman to join their family. I chose to take it as acceptance rather than ownership. Our wedding plans quickly spiraled beyond my control. The extravagant wedding Leila Monroe thought was a fairy tale quickly morphed into a chilling revelation. She overheard voices echoing through the marble hallway. It wasn't a gift, it was a trap. The celebration's sweet scent of fresh peonies twisted into something acrid. Leah's heart raced as she pieced together the truth. Those lavish gifts came with invisible chains, tightly wrapping around her. Standing by the doorway, Martin Ray's face was a mask of conflict, his eyes averted, filled with shame. Memories of the garden party flooded her mind, but now they felt tainted with betrayal. How could she have missed it? The whispers of dependence, the facade of generosity. It all suddenly made sense. Martin wanted to maintain peace, caught in the crossfire between her and his family's rigid expectations. But what about her? Her hopes slipped away, overshadowed by the weight of their family's ambitions. Did she deserve a space of her own? That once joyous celebration became an echo of her struggle, her worth, her dignity, all intertwined in a baleful ballet of family pride. Franklin Doyle, Martin's father, stood firm in his traditions. He was a man of reputation, fiercely protecting the legacy above all else, and Joanne Pierce, his ambitious wife, was always more concerned with appearances than truth. They laid traps disguised as kindness, and Leah was ensnared. Would she find a way to reclaim her identity? At every Sunday dinner, Leah wore the mask of the perfect daughter-in-law. She baked Franklin Doyle's beloved desserts, joined Joanne's garden club, and smiled through Sandra Knox's barbed words. But inside, a fire ignited. The family dynamics had twisted so far, pain wrapped in the facade of love. As she plotted her escape from their web of lies, would Leah find the courage to unmask the truth and forge her own path? It was time to confront the darkness they hid. She took a deep breath, ready to rise. Would she break free, or remain suffocated in the shadows of their expectations? I could feel the tension crackling in the air, a thick fog that blanketed the room. It felt like stepping into a trap. Martin Ray's family had a way of suffocating you with their expectations, and tonight it was no different. Though I imagine Joanne appreciates you keeping busy while he handles the important work at Hardcourt. Sandra Knox shot at me, her words coated with disdain. The unspoken truth hung like a storm cloud over my head. I was Martin Ray's wife, yes, but never truly a member of the Hardcourt clan. Tolerated, not truly accepted. It all began to spiral when I got promoted to executive vice president. An honor, sure, but their reactions were anything but supportive. "I suppose this means we'll see even less of you at family functions," Joanne said, her lips curling in a faux smile. "Are you sure you can handle the pressure?" Franklin Doyle added, his skepticism as sharp as the fine china behind him. Sandra Knox smirked, asking if my salary came with a clothing allowance, as if dressing well was the only qualification I held. But what stung the most was the silence from Martin. He would squeeze my hand or shoot me sympathetic glances, but never did he stand up for me. "That's just how they are, GE. They don't mean anything by it." But they did mean something. The quiet disapproval simmered under the surface, and I felt it erupting like a volcano, threatening everything we had built. That volcanic pressure reached its breaking point on my 35th birthday. I had wished for a simple dinner at our favorite restaurant, something casual, filled with laughter. Instead, I walked into our home, transformed into an extravagant cocktail party venue. "Surprise!" Martin announced, beaming. The decor shouted pretension, with caterers swarming like bees and flowers arranged in a way that could grace the cover of a magazine. I stood there in my work clothes, feeling a wave of confusion crash over me. "Mom thought you deserved something special," he said, but all I could think was, did anyone ask what I wanted? In that moment, a question lingered in the air. Was this the family I wanted, or was it time to carve out a path of my own? My heart raced with anticipation. Would I find the courage to confront this whirlwind of expectations, or would I remain lost in the facade they've built? The truth was near, and it clawed at me, desperate to break free. As champagne flutes clinked and laughter bubbled, Leila Monroe slipped away from the vibrant crowd of her in-laws. The scent of fresh flowers mingled with the tantalizing aroma of hors d'oeuvres as she made her way to the dimly lit hallway. Heart pounding, she crouched behind the coat closet, her breath shallow. There, she found a folded letter, her name scrawled in Martin Ray's unmistakable handwriting. With trembling hands, she unfolded it, and her world collapsed. He had known about the Hardcourt family's secret all along. The noise of the party faded into a haunting silence. Betrayal pierced through her like a bitter wind. How could the man she loved, the one who promised to stand by her, leave her to shoulder such a heavy burden alone? A wave of anger crashed over her, mixed with the pain of realization. Gathering herself, Leah re-entered the party, forcing a smile as Franklin Doyle and Joanne Pierce mingled. Their laughter rang hollow in her ears, masking the tension as she noticed Sandra Knox lurking nearby, a sharp tongue ready to exploit any sign of weakness. Leah's tumultuous thoughts spun like a whirlwind. Was this really the family she had longed to be a part of? Or had she merely been a pawn in their social game? As the night wore on, clattering dishes and forced pleasantries filled the air. Leah felt trapped, a ghost within her own life. The revealing letter weighed heavily in her pocket, a reminder of trust shattered. Her heart raced with questions. Would she have the strength to confront Martin about it? Did their marriage offer the partnership she thought it did? Later, in a moment of boldness, Leah approached Martin, her voice low but firm. "We need to talk." His eyes widened, surprised at her sudden seriousness. She dragged him into a quiet corner away from the prying eyes of family members, the walls draped with memories of moments that were supposed to be warm and loving. Yet, she was drowning in expectations she hadn't asked for. "Did you even consider how I felt tonight?" she asked, the words tumbling out like a dam finally breaking. "You let Joanne Pierce turn my birthday into her show, while I stood there, a stranger in my own house. And you knew." The pause hung between them, thick with unspoken truths. Martin sighed, his expression conflicted. "I thought it would make you happy, Leah." "But at what cost? I can't keep pretending. It's time to reclaim my dignity. And our truth." The silence that followed crackled with tension, a make-or-break moment in their marriage. Would Martin stand by her side, or succumb to the expectations of the Harcourt family? The choice lay ahead, and Leah felt the ground shift beneath her. Would she forge her own path, or would she remain in the shadows forever? "What are you doing here?" 2 weeks later, she appeared at the same restaurant in Detroit where I was having dinner with clients, then again at a coffee shop near our Chicago office. Each time with a plausible explanation that nonetheless left me feeling unsettled. Digital anomalies began piling up as well. Emails I was certain I had received from male colleagues would disappear from my inbox. Photos from work events would somehow appear in family members. Phones with innocent interactions captured at angles that made them appear more intimate than they were. "Who's the guy with his arm around you?" Martin Ray asked one evening, showing me a photo I had never seen from our agency holiday party. "That's Diego, our new art director. He was drunk and falling over, and I was helping him stand up straight for the group photo." I peered at the image. "Where did you get this?" "Sandra Knox sent it to me. Said she saw it on someone's social media, but none of my coworkers had posted photos from the private event. When I checked our company's secure photo sharing site, I found that someone had accessed it using my credentials from an unknown device. The invasion of privacy extended to our home. Items in my office would be slightly moved when I returned from work. My laptop would be in a different position than I had left it. Once I found my personal journal moved from its hiding place in my desk drawer. When I confronted Martin Ray about these oddities, he dismissed my concerns as paranoia from work stress. "Maybe you should cut back on hours," he suggested during one such conversation. "Mom thinks you're developing workaholic tendencies. She knows a great therapist who specializes in work-life balance. His father had his own suggestions. I'd be happy to take a look at your finances," Leila Monroe Harold offered during a Sunday dinner. "For tax purposes, of course. With your new position, you might be making some errors in your reporting." The monitoring became more blatant. Leila Monroe sat at her childhood kitchen table, the late afternoon sun flickering through faded curtains. The sharp tang of lemon cleanser mixed with her mother's perfume. Safe, grounding. Her hands gripped a chipped mug, knuckles whitening. Behind her, muffled laughter and the echo of siblings' feet reminded her of simpler loyalties. But then, a sudden chill ran down her spine as her father raised his voice. Nothing serious, but the memory settled heavy, a reminder that safety can vanish in a hush. The scent, the light, and the unspoken tension wouldn't leave her mind. Fast forward to today, Leah finds herself in a web of family betrayal and struggle for self-respect. Her husband, Martin Ray, charming yet conflicted, is caught between his loyalty to her and the suffocating expectations of his family. He wants to maintain stability, but at what cost? Leah's father-in-law, Franklin Doyle, is a traditional man, set in his ways. He's torn between upholding family traditions and nurturing personal relationships. Meanwhile, her mother-in-law, Joanne Pierce, is socially active and image-conscious, desperate to protect the family's stature. And then there's Sandra Knox, her sister-in-law, snippy and confrontational, driven by resentment and rivalry. As Leah navigates this toxic family dynamic, she feels the weight of their scrutiny. The unannounced visits from her in-laws escalate, each one a reminder of her diminishing autonomy. "We were in the neighborhood," Joanne would say, as if that made it okay. But Leah knows better. One day, after Sandra borrowed Leah's phone, she discovers a tracking app installed without her consent. The invasion of privacy is suffocating. Martin begins checking her phone while she showers, dismissing her concerns as paranoia. Maybe you should cut back on hours, he suggests, as if her work is the problem. The tension builds. Leah's friendship with Thomas, a college buddy going through a tough divorce, becomes a point of contention. "Don't you think it's inappropriate to spend so much time with another man?" Martin asks, his voice laced with doubt. The unannounced visits from her in-laws become more frequent, each one a reminder of her entrapment. One day, Leah returns from a quick grocery run to find her home office door ajar. She overhears Martin and Sandra in hushed conversation. "We need more," Sandra insists. "This isn't enough to convince anyone." Leah's heart races. What are they plotting? That night, she begins documenting everything. She's determined to reclaim her dignity, reveal the truth, and find her own path. As the storm brews, Leah knows she must confront the chaos. Will she break free from the chains of family loyalty? Or will she remain trapped in a web of deceit? The answer lies in her hands. Each strange occurrence, each unsettling coincidence, each invasion of privacy, I meticulously documented in a password-protected file stored in the cloud. Only I could access it. My instincts screamed that something was very wrong. When I tried to voice my concerns to Martin, he snapped, "You're being ridiculous. My family loves you. They've given us everything. This promotion is making you suspicious of everyone, and frankly, it's not attractive." His words stung, but they also confirmed my worst fears. Martin would never take my side against his family. Whatever was happening, I had to figure it out alone. The following week, I met my friend Nicole for lunch. Unlike the friends I had lost touch with after marrying into the Ray family, Nicole had stubbornly remained in my life. A cybersecurity specialist with a healthy distrust of authority, she had never warmed to the Rays, and they had never bothered to charm her. "Something weird is going on," I confided after we ordered. "My devices are acting strange, and I think someone's monitoring my communications." Nicole didn't laugh or dismiss me. Instead, she reached for my phone. "Let me see." 20 minutes later, her expression shifted from curious to furious. "Leah, your phone has 3 different monitoring applications installed. 2 are commercial spyware that parents use to track teenagers, but this third one is more sophisticated. It captures keystrokes, accesses your camera remotely, and sends all your data to an external server." My stomach dropped. Could it be some kind of work security thing? "Not unless your company routinely violates federal privacy laws." She looked at me, deadly serious. "Someone is surveilling you, professionally and thoroughly." That afternoon, Nicole set me up with clean devices. "I've installed counter-monitoring software," she explained, showing me how to access the logs. As I absorbed her words, the weight of betrayal settled heavily on my chest. Who in my family could be behind this? The thought sent chills down my spine. I felt like a puppet, strings pulled by unseen hands. The clatter of silverware faded around us. The busy restaurant suddenly felt muffled, claustrophobic. Halfway through lunch, Nicole slid her phone across the table, screen aglow with a string of surveillance footage, grainy, time-stamped clips from inside my own home. My heart thudded against my ribs as I pieced together the horrifying truth. Someone in my family had been watching my every move. Nicole's voice cut through my shock, soft but razor-sharp. "They're not just keeping tabs, they're orchestrating everything." The realization hit me like a thunderclap. I was trapped in a web of deceit, and the only way out was to confront the chaos. Would I break free from the chains of family loyalty? Or would I remain ensnared in their twisted game? The answer lay in my hands. The room buzzed with a low, nervous hum. Leila Monroe's heart raced in sync with the flickering fluorescent lights above. Outside, Des Moines pulsed with life, the scent of rain mingling with the distant sounds of honking horns and bustling voices. She stood just outside the glass, eyes locked on Sandra Knox inside, exchanging envelopes with a man who looked all too familiar. A jolt of recognition hit her. This wasn't just idle gossip. They were plotting something far more sinister. Leah's phone vibrated in her pocket, a text lighting up the screen. "Did you get what you needed?" In that moment, she realized she was no longer the one being watched. Days passed, and Leah's unease grew. Nicole had set her up with clean devices, but the logs revealed a chilling truth. Multiple access attempts from the Harcourt family home, Sandra's apartment, and most shockingly, devices registered to Martin Ray. Why would her husband and his family spy on her? The answer came when Leah decided to follow Sandra, using a shopping trip as a cover. She trailed her from a boutique to a nondescript office building in the West Loop. Through the street-level window, she watched Sandra greet a man in a cheap suit, his receding hairline and bulky frame suggesting a former athlete now out of shape. Leah snapped photos with her clean phone, then ran the man's face through social media. James Porter, private investigator, former Chicago PD. The pieces began to fall into place. Martin had been paying Porter $2,000 a month for the past 3 months. That night, Leah dug deeper. Public records revealed that Harcourt Manufacturing had posted significant losses recently. But the real shock came when she uncovered the trust established by Martin's grandfather, set to transfer control of the company to Martin on his 40th birthday, just 6 months away. The final piece clicked into place when Leah reviewed their prenuptial agreement. Clause 23B stated that if she were ever unfaithful, she would forfeit all claims to marital assets. The weight of betrayal settled heavily on her chest. Was this all a setup? A twisted game to protect family reputation at her expense? Leah felt the walls closing in, the air thick with tension. Would she confront the chaos, or remain ensnared in their web of deceit? The answer lay in her hands, and she was ready to reclaim her dignity. A separate clause noted that if our marriage ended before Martin Ray's 40th birthday, certain trust disbursements would accelerate. The picture became crystal clear. If I could be proven unfaithful, Martin Ray would gain immediate control of his trust, solving the company's financial issues while completely cutting me out of any claim to the wealth I had spent a decade helping to build. My husband and his family were setting me up. With Nicole's help, I established a comprehensive counter-surveillance operation. Every meeting I took included witnesses and time-stamped evidence of my whereabouts. Hidden cameras installed in my home office caught Sandra Knox searching through my desk drawers when she thought I was out. Voice-activated recording devices captured Joanne Pierce and Franklin Doyle discussing their plan to save Martin Ray from that woman before she ruins everything. Most damning of all were the files I discovered on Sandra Knox's cloud storage when Nicole helped me access it remotely. Dozens of photos of me with male colleagues, all taken without my knowledge, all carefully cropped or edited to appear suspicious. In one, the group of 6 people had been cropped out, leaving just me and Tim standing close together. In another, a friendly hug with my cousin visiting from Ohio had been captured from an angle that made it look intimate. I consulted discreetly with an attorney presenting the evidence I had gathered. "They're building a case for infidelity," she confirmed after reviewing the materials. "Not enough for court, but certainly enough to pressure you into a disadvantageous settlement if your husband confronted you with it." "What should I do?" I asked, still reeling from the magnitude of the betrayal. "Document everything. Continue gathering evidence and decide how you want this to end. Do you want to save your marriage, or are you prepared for it to be over?" I honestly didn't know. Leila Monroe stood at the threshold, poised between the echoes of a joyous dinner and the heavy weight of truth in her purse. The laughter from the dining room felt like a distant mockery, crystal glasses clinking in a rhythm that set her heart racing. The pearls around her neck felt suffocatingly tight as her fingers brushed the smooth envelope tucked inside, a truth that could change everything. Did they know about the evidence she held? As Martin Ray grasped her hand, his touch quivered, brimming with unspoken words. Who would break the silence first tonight? The man Leah thought she knew would never engage in such a treacherous scheme, yet all signs pointed to betrayal. The carefully woven web of deceit spun by the Harcourts was becoming clearer by the day. They were plotting and scheming, and Leah was determined not to play the victim any longer. When the invitation to Franklin and Joanne's 45th anniversary dinner arrived, Leah sensed the moment had come. Martin insisted they attend, his standard response every time she tried to carve out space for herself. "It's important to the family," he said, oblivious to her internal turmoil. This time she agreed without argument, knowing the stakes were higher than ever. On the night of the dinner, Leah chose her outfit meticulously. Dressed in a conservative blue dress, the one Joanne had once praised, she styled her hair, applied minimal makeup, and slipped on pearl earrings given to her by Franklin years ago. It was an image of the perfect daughter-in-law, stepping willingly into their trap. But hidden in her purse was each carefully documented piece of evidence she had amassed over the past month. And beneath her dress, strapped neatly to her bra, was a recording device Nicole had equipped her with just in case tempers flared. As Martin navigated the familiar streets toward his parents' grand home, Leah felt an unexpected calm wash over her, like rain soothing the dry earth after a long drought. That night would dictate the future of her life. When they arrived, the Harcourt mansion sparkled with lights, exuding warmth like a holiday display. Valets shuffled around and caterers scurried through the service entrance, all oblivious to the brewing storm inside. Martin smoothly passed the keys to the valet and linked his arm with hers, asking, "Ready?" Leah pondered if he understood the weight of his question. "Absolutely," she replied, faking a bright smile as she squeezed his arm. The door swung open, revealing Joanne in a dazzling silver gown, shimmering with a price tag that likely eclipsed Leah's monthly salary. A battle loomed ahead, shrouded in elegance and deceit. Would she unveil the truth that night? Or would the Harcourt's web ensnare her once more? The night was thick with tension, and Leah was ready to face it head-on. Her smile was as fragile as glass when she air-kissed my cheeks. "Leah, darling, so glad you could make it. We were beginning to wonder if work would keep you away as usual." The sweetness dripped from her words, but the sting was unmistakable. I forced a warm smile. "I wouldn't miss celebrating your 45 years of marriage for anything in the world, Joanne. It's such an inspiration." For a moment, surprise flickered across her face, but she quickly masked it. "Well, come in. Everyone's in the great room." And everyone turned out to be about 30 people, family and the Harcourt's closest friends. I recognized most from past gatherings, but one face stood out. James Porter, the private investigator. He looked out of place in his ill-fitting suit, clearly uncomfortable among the well-heeled crowd. "Leah, lovely as always," Franklin Doyle boomed, his champagne flute raised. The way he emphasized "always" made my skin crawl, but I kept my pleasant facade intact. "Congratulations on 45 remarkable years, Franklin Doyle. The house looks beautiful." "All Joanne's doing," he replied dismissively, turning back to Martin. "Come say hello to Bill Stevens. He's considering a significant investment in the Eastern Distribution Center." Just like that, I was left alone, abandoned for business as usual. I navigated through the crowd, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server. Polite inquiries about my work followed by glazed expressions when I answered, then quick pivots to gossip about people I barely knew. Just as I contemplated a second glass, Sandra Knox appeared at my side, her blood-red dress a stark contrast to Joanne's shimmering silver. "Still playing the dutiful daughter-in-law, I see," she sneered, her eyes glinting with mischief. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the night pressing down on me. The air was thick with tension, and I could sense the storm brewing beneath the surface. Would I finally reveal the truth? Or would the Harcourt's web ensnare me once more? As I scanned the room, the scent of rain lingered in the air, a reminder that change was coming. The crystal chandelier above glinted ominously, scattering fractured light across tense faces. My heart raced as Franklin strode closer, his gaze locked on James Porter, the stranger in the crowd. Conversations faltered. Glasses clinked too loudly. Why was the investigator here? And what secret was about to upend the night? The stakes had never been higher. Would I reclaim my dignity, or would I remain trapped in this gilded cage? The night was just beginning, and I was ready to face whatever came next. Her dark hair swept into a severe updo that emphasized the sharpness of her features. "Enjoying yourself?" she asked, her tone suggesting she knew the answer was negative. "Immensely," I lied. "Your parents certainly know how to celebrate. Mother has always believed important occasions deserve proper recognition." Her eyes gleamed with something that made me uneasy. Family milestones, especially. Before I could respond, a server announced that dinner was served, and we all migrated to the formal dining room. The massive mahogany table had been extended to accommodate all 30 guests, with Franklin Doyle and Vivian at opposite ends. Martin Ray and I were seated on one side with Sandra Knox directly across from me. James Porter, I noticed, was placed just 2 seats away from her, close enough for easy conversation. The meal progressed through multiple courses, each more elaborate than the last. Conversation flowed around business successes, vacation properties, and the accomplishments of various children and grandchildren. I contributed when appropriate, but mainly observed the dynamics around me. Martin Ray grew increasingly quiet as dinner progressed, responding to direct questions, but otherwise staring at his plate. Sandra Knox, by contrast, became more animated, exchanging significant glances with her mother and occasionally leaning to whisper something to Porter. After the dessert plates were cleared, Franklin Doyle stood and raised his glass. "I want to thank everyone for joining us to celebrate 45 years of marriage to my beautiful wife." Polite applause followed as he continued. "Family has always been the foundation of our success. Loyalty to family above all else has guided every decision I've made in business and in life." He looked pointedly at Martin Ray during this last statement. My husband shifted uncomfortably beside me. "To family loyalty," Franklin Doyle concluded, raising his glass higher. "To family loyalty." The guests echoed, drinking to the toast. As the servers poured coffee, Joanne Pierce stood next. The taste of burnt coffee lingered as Leila Monroe replayed the morning she discovered the shadows lurking in her marriage, a pair of hushed voices behind a closed door. Her name was a whispered accusation. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, glinting off Martin Ray's hair, but even that brightness couldn't lift the heaviness settling in the pit of her stomach. Each detail vibrated in her mind. The scent of lemon polish on the table, her trembling fingers curling around the mug, the dread unfurling beneath her family's polished facade. How could everything feel so perfect while something sinister simmered just beneath the surface? Weeks passed, and now she sat at the massive mahogany table surrounded by 30 smiling faces. Family milestones required celebration, or so Joanne Pierce would say. But tonight felt different. The air was thick with a tension that made everything feel disjointed. Leah observed Martin beside her, rarely lifting his eyes from his plate, while Sandra Knox, her sister-in-law, was practically gleeful, exchanging conspiratorial glances and snide remarks with James Porter, the family friend who seemed too comfortable here. As dinner wore on, Franklin Doyle raised his glass to toast a marriage that had weathered decades, his voice booming with pride. "To family loyalty." Leah forced a smile, but with each cheer, the weight on her chest grew heavier. When Porter was called upon to speak, she couldn't shake the feeling that his presence was only adding to their family's facade. "And loyalty is everything in a marriage," he said, the words dawning like a storm on the horizon. Leah's heart dropped. Did he see the cracks, she felt? The tension escalated when Sandra Knox, with a wicked glint in her eye, produced a manila folder. A collective gasp echoed, freezing Leah's breath. This was it. "Martin Ray," Sandra Knox said, her voice dripping with feigned concern. "I can't stay silent any longer." She slammed the folder onto the table and opened it, revealing countless photographs, each one a dagger aimed at Leah's heart. "Your precious wife with other men," Sandra Knox hissed, relishing every moment. Leah's innocence was framed as suspicion. Her laughter, her hugs, her professional meetings twisted into something scandalous. Gasps of disbelief ricocheted around the room. "How could you betray our family?" Joanne Pierce's voice trembled, a rehearsed performance of shock. Leah felt Martin's shame slice deeper than any words could convey. He couldn't even meet her gaze. Could loyalty really tear families apart? Leah's eyes sparkled with fierce determination. She wouldn't let their betrayal define her. No more hiding behind a false smile. It was time to reclaim her dignity, to unravel the web of lies and to step into her truth. She would reveal the real Leila Monroe, the one not bound by toxic loyalty but empowered by her resilience. Could this family survive the storm that was about to break? The real question lingered in the air as she prepared to fight for her voice amidst the chaos. Franklin Doyle's voice cut through the thick air like a knife. "Leila Monroe, I've always had reservations about your character. A woman so focused on her career rarely has the moral fortitude for true family commitment." The words landed heavily, igniting a wildfire of tension as 30 pairs of eyes pierced through me, judgment simmering beneath the surface. The betrayal from Martin gnawed at my heart, more painfully than all the accusations thrown my way. I felt my hands trembling, not from fear, but from a bubbling fury. The dining room was engulfed in silence, all eyes fixed on me. I reached into my purse, my fingers brushing against the leather portfolio. With a powerful resolve, I set it on the table, smoothing its surface, and locked eyes with Sandra Knox's triumphant smirk. "Before everyone jumps to conclusions," my voice cut through the stillness, steady despite the storm within. "I think we should examine these photos more carefully." I opened the portfolio, revealing neatly organized documents. "This first photo," I said, pulling out an image of myself and Tim at Paulina Grill, "is from just 2 weeks ago. Care to tell everyone when it was taken, Sandra Knox?" She blinked, momentarily caught off guard. Tuesday." "Interesting," I nodded, retrieving the lunch receipt showing 6 meals, not 2. I handed it to a cousin of Martin Ray's who winced at the sight. "And look at this group shot, taken by the waiter, showing me, Tim, and our entire creative team discussing the Johnson campaign. Notice how Sandra Knox conveniently cropped out the 4 other people at that table." "Now, this one," I said, picking up another photo depicting me embracing a man outside a hotel. "Sandra Knox, when your investigator snapped this shot, didn't he think to take any others? Perhaps including this man's wife, who showed up moments later with her 2 children. Gasps filled the air, the tension thick enough to cut. Would they cling stubbornly to their narrative, or would the truth dismantle their carefully constructed facade? Every pulse in my veins buzzed with anticipation as the silence weighed heavily on all of us. Were they really prepared for what came next? The scent of freshly cut grass wafted in through the kitchen window. Leila Monroe stood at the sink, her hands submerged in soapy water. The cheerful laughter of her cousin David echoed from the hallway, while golden pools of sunlight splashed across the linoleum. Her mother hummed a nostalgic tune in the background. In those precious moments, loyalty felt like a simple choice, untouched by suspicion. But now, when Leah thought of David, the stinging chlorine from the hotel pool clouded her memories, each recollection tangled in a net of betrayal. The tension in the dining room was palpable as Leah faced her family. "You all know me," she began, her voice steady yet charged. "But the truth is layered beneath the surface." She reached for her leather portfolio, and the room held its breath. Before anyone jumps to conclusions, Leah paused, locking eyes with her sister-in-law Sandra, whose smirk danced on the edge of triumph. "Let's examine these photos more carefully." With deliberate movements, Leah unfolded the evidence, revealing snapshots from a recent family reunion. David, his wife Laura, and their kids smiled in matching T-shirts, unity captured in frame after frame. Her husband Martin's expression shifted from hurt to confusion as she continued. "And these?" Leah gestured to the hotel photos taken during a business meeting. "Did your investigator happen to note the separate rooms we checked into? Or the 15 people present at the client dinner?" Each piece of evidence laid bare shifted the room's energy further. "For months, I felt watched." Leah's voice grew stronger, cutting through the whispers. Her heart raced as she revealed the truth behind the spy software she had uncovered. "I dismissed my feelings as paranoia before I took matters into my own hands. I found spyware traced back to this house and, most shockingly, to you, Martin." Gasps filled the air, a wave of disbelief crashing over the guests. Whispers fluttered like leaves rustling in the wind. "And then I questioned Mr. Porter here," she continued, her gaze piercing the investigator, who looked curiously at his water glass. "What secrets are you hiding?" The stakes had never felt higher, yet the desire for truth surged within Leah. Would her family cling to their narrative, or could the tangible proof of betrayal dismantle their carefully constructed facade? The silence that fell over the table was heavy with anticipation, and Leah stood ready to reveal all, each pulse in her veins chanting the undeniable truth she was determined to uncover. I produced photographs of Sandra Knox meeting with Porter, time and date stamped. I found it odd that our joint account showed payments of $2,000 monthly to Porter Investigations, especially since you never mentioned hiring a private investigator, Martin Ray. My husband's face had progressed from pale to ashen. Most interesting of all was when I accessed Hardcourt Manufacturing's recent financial filings. I withdrew several pages of financial statements. 2 consecutive quarters of significant losses coinciding with Martin Ray's 40th birthday approaching in 6 months. Franklin Doyle stood abruptly. "That's confidential company information. Public records for a publicly traded company," I corrected calmly, but it helped me understand the urgency behind this little scheme. When I reviewed our prenuptial agreement, I extracted the relevant pages highlighted for emphasis. Clause 23B states that in the event of infidelity on my part, I forfeit all claims to marital assets. And if our marriage ends before Martin Ray's 40th birthday, his trust fund accelerates its disbursement schedule. I looked directly at Franklin Doyle. The company needs cash. Martin Ray's trust would provide it, but only if I'm out of the picture before his birthday. Hence the elaborate setup to catch me cheating. The room had gone deathly silent. Even the servers had stopped moving, transfixed by the unfolding drama. The surveillance was comprehensive. I continued laying out more evidence. Hidden cameras in my office caught Sandra Knox searching my desk when I wasn't home. I played a brief video clip on my phone showing exactly that. Voice-activated recording devices captured some illuminating conversations. I pressed play on another recording. Franklin Doyle's voice filled the room. "Once we have enough evidence, Martin Ray will have no choice but to divorce her. The prenup is ironclad. She'll get nothing." Joanne Pierce's voice responded, "It's for his own good. She was never right for this family." Martin Ray stood suddenly, his chair screeching against the hardwood floor. "Stop, please." I looked up at my husband, seeing genuine horror in his eyes for the first time. "Did you know? Were you part of this?" He shook his head, then nodded, then shook it again. They said they were concerned about you. Said you might be unhappy looking elsewhere. Dad suggested we just make sure for my protection. You never thought they'd manufacture evidence, manipulate photos, spy on your wife." My voice broke slightly. "You never thought to trust me or ask me directly." Sandra Knox slammed her hand on the table. "She was taking you away from us. Ever since you married her, you've been different. Questioning family decisions, missing events for her work functions, putting her before family." "That's what marriage is," Sandra Knox Martin Ray shouted, startling everyone with his vehemence. "Leila Monroe is my family, too." Franklin Doyle attempted to regain control of the situation. "Now, let's all calm down. This has clearly been a misunderstanding, Leila Monroe. These precautions may seem extreme, but we were only protecting family interests. Surely you can understand our concern when your behavior became erratic." "My behavior was never erratic," I replied coldly. "I was succeeding in my career while trying to be part of a family that never truly accepted me. And instead of celebrating my success, you saw it as a threat and constructed an elaborate plot to discredit me." I turned to Porter, who looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. "I wonder what the Illinois Department of Professional Regulation would think about your methods, Mr. Porter. Illegal surveillance, doctoring, evidence, conspiracy to commit fraud. Seems like grounds to revoke your investigator's license at minimum." Porter's eyes widened in alarm, and Franklin Doyle. I continued, "The board of directors might have questions about using company resources for a personal vendetta." The tension in the air was thick as Leila Monroe sat in the car, the city lights of Des Moines flickering past like memories she wished she could erase. The silence was deafening, broken only by the clipped voice message playing from her phone, an accidental pocket dial from Sandra Knox, her sister-in-law. Through the crackling audio, Leah's heart raced as she heard Franklin Doyle, her father-in-law, admit to orchestrating payments to a private investigator. Then came Joanne Pierce, her mother-in-law, confessing she knew Porter was siphoning money from the family. Each word felt like a dagger, twisting deeper into her chest. As the rain began to fall, the scent of wet asphalt filled the car. Leah realized she hadn't betrayed the family. She had merely exposed a deception that ran far deeper than her marriage. Back at their brownstone, the door clicked shut behind them, sealing off the chaos of the night. Martin Ray, her husband, sank onto the sofa, his head in his hands. "I don't even know where to begin," he murmured, his voice hollow. Leah stood by the window, arms crossed tightly over her chest, a fortress against the storm brewing inside her. "Did you know about all of it?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with hurt. "The surveillance, the private investigator, the doctored photos?" He looked up, his eyes rimmed with red. "Not all of it. Not at first." He took a shuddering breath. "Dad came to me about 3 months ago. He said he was concerned about changes in your behavior. He suggested we just make sure everything was okay." "And you believed him?" Leah's voice was sharp, cutting through the air like a knife. Martin Ray hesitated, the weight of his family's expectations hanging heavily between them. "I thought it was for the best." "For the best?" Leah echoed, disbelief flooding her. "You let them spy on me, manipulate my life, all in the name of family loyalty?" The rain intensified outside, each drop a reminder of the storm they were caught in. Leah felt the walls closing in, the betrayal stinging like the cold wind against her skin. "Leah, Don't," she interrupted, her heart pounding. "You need to choose, Martin Ray. Are you with me, or are you with them?" In that moment, the truth hung heavy in the air, a fragile thread that could either bind them together or tear them apart. Would he stand by her side, or would he let the weight of family tradition crush their love? The answer felt like a ticking clock, each second echoing louder than the last. Rather than talking to me, the hurt in my voice was palpable. "I didn't know what to believe," Martin Ray admitted. "You were working late, traveling more. There were texts at odd hours. When Dad showed me the first photos, they looked suspicious. I should have questioned them more, but you trusted your family over your wife." I finished for him. He nodded miserably. "I'm so sorry, Gert. I never thought they would go this far." When Sandra Knox started talking about the prenup and my trust fund last week, I realized this wasn't just about protecting me, but by then I felt trapped. If I backed out, I'd be admitting I'd betrayed you. If I went forward, I'd be complicit in their plan. "So you chose complicity?" I said flatly. "I chose wrong," he whispered. "I've never been so ashamed in my life." We talked until dawn, painful truths spilling out between us. How Martin Ray had never truly separated from his family emotionally. How I had suppressed my resentment of their treatment to keep the peace. How we had both failed to build a marriage strong enough to withstand external pressures. Around 5 in the morning, Martin Ray's phone rang. It was Sandra Knox calling for the 4th time. He finally answered, putting it on speaker. "You need to control your wife," she hissed without preamble. "Do you have any idea of the damage she's done?" The Andersons left in the middle of dessert. The Bradleys were still there when I went upstairs. Everyone is talking. "Good, Martin Ray," replied his voice stronger than it had been all night. "Let them talk. Maybe they'll all think twice before trying to destroy someone's reputation." "She's turned you against your own family," Sandra Knox said, her voice cracking. "Can't you see that's what she's wanted all along?" "No, Sandra Knox. You and Mom and Dad turned me against Leila Monroe. You made me doubt the one person who has consistently supported me even when I didn't deserve it. We were trying to protect you. You were trying to control me," Martin Ray countered, echoing my earlier words. Leila Monroe traced the stitched border of an old photo, her fingers brushing the faded edge. The scent of lemon polish and cigar smoke lingered in her memory, transporting her back to a night filled with laughter. Martin Ray's easy, nervous chuckle mixed with Franklin Doyle's deep, commanding voice. It felt warm and safe, the house alive with familiar bustle and whispered secrets. But beneath that warmth, Leah felt an uneasy pressure in her chest. The sidelong glances, the weight of silence after Sandra Knox's biting remark, it all clung to her like the sharp tang of wine spilled on a pristine tablecloth. As she stood there, Leah's heart raced. How had it come to this? The betrayal from those she loved most gnawed at her. Martin Ray, her husband, caught between loyalty to his family and his devotion to her. Franklin Doyle, her father-in-law, a man steeped in tradition, torn between family reputation and personal relationships. Joanne Pierce, her mother-in-law, always concerned with appearances, hiding the truth behind a polished smile. And then there was Sandra Knox, her sister-in-law, whose snippy remarks and confrontational nature only added fuel to the fire. The next morning, a call from Franklin's attorney shattered the fragile peace. A settlement was on the table, but Leah felt the weight of their expectations pressing down on her. Martin Ray, finally finding his voice, refused the offer without consulting her. "I'm taking a leave of absence from the company," he declared, determination in his eyes. "I need to figure out what I want, separate from what they've always expected." They met with their own attorney, discussing potential legal actions against the hard courts. Leah felt a flicker of hope. Could they finally reclaim their dignity? But the thought of public exposure loomed large. "Let's start with a cease and desist regarding all surveillance and investigation activities," their lawyer suggested. Word of the confrontation at the anniversary dinner spread like wildfire. Martin Ray's cousin Stephanie reached out, expressing her support. "I've always found Joanne Pierce and Franklin Doyle's treatment of you disturbing," she admitted. Leah felt a sense of validation. Even within the Hardcourt family, there were those who understood. Then came the unexpected visit. A week after the dinner, Joanne appeared at their front door looking smaller and older than Leah had ever seen her. "May I come in?" she asked, her voice trembling. Leah's heart raced. What could this mean? Would it be another attempt to control, or was it a chance for reconciliation? The tension hung thick in the air, and Leah knew this moment could change everything. Gone were the designer clothes and flawless makeup, replaced by a simple sweater and bare skin. Leila Monroe hesitated, then stepped aside to let Joanne Pierce in. "I owe you an apology," Joanne said, settling into the living room, though I doubt any apology could be enough. "Why?" Leah asked, her voice steady. "Why go to such lengths to destroy me?" Joanne's eyes dropped to her clasped hands. "I told myself it was to protect Martin Ray, to safeguard the family legacy. But—" her voice quivered. "The truth is far less noble." Leah leaned in, sensing the storm brewing. Joanne looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I was jealous of your youth, your success, your independence, all things I sacrificed to be the perfect hardcourt wife." "That was your choice," Leah replied, firm. "No one forced you to give those things up." "Didn't they?" Joanna shot back with a bitter laugh. "You have no idea the pressure Franklin put on me. I was told to quit my teaching job, to focus solely on being his wife, a mother, the hardcourt hostess. By the time I realized the cost, it was too late." "So you wanted me to make the same sacrifices?" Leah pressed, feeling the weight of the conversation. Joanne's voice dropped to a whisper. "I wanted to believe they were worth making. If you could have both, a career and a marriage, what does that say about my choices?" They talked for nearly an hour. No resolutions, just the slow unraveling of years of misunderstanding. As she was leaving, Joanne turned back to Leah. "Franklin will never apologize. He believes everything he does justifies the family business." "And Sandra?" Leah inquired, the tension writhing in the air. "Sandra Knox?" Joanne sighed. "She's defined solely as a hardcourt. Your independence threatens her entire sense of self." When Martin Ray returned, Leah shared the news of his mother's visit. He looked cautiously optimistic. "It's a start," he said, though exhaustion weighed heavily on him. "More than I expected." The next day, Martin Ray met with Sandra at her request. He returned home looking emotionally drained, but somehow relieved. What had transpired behind those closed doors? The aroma of fresh rain hung in the air, mingling with a sense of impending change. Just when Leah thought hope could blossom, shadows loomed larger. Would they truly break free from the family's grip? Or was this just another facade in a long line of betrayals? Rain tapped against the window, a relentless drumbeat echoing in the thick, charged air. The scent of damp earth filled the room as Sandra Knox stumbled across a hidden stack of letters, old, unmailed treasures from Franklin. "Mom never wanted things to go this far," Leila Monroe read aloud, her voice steady but trembling. "She was jealous. Jealous of my relationship with you." She paused, the weight of those words hanging heavily as the truth unfurled. Martin Ray, caught in the storm of family expectations, shifted uncomfortably. "Do you believe her?" he asked, his voice low. Leah's gaze locked onto him. "I believe she believes it." The tension in the air thickened. This family, once united by tradition, now teetered on the edge of a chasm. With each revelation, familial bonds twisted tighter, exposing fears long buried. Franklin Doyle's rigid hold on Joanne Pierce had distorted her love into jealousy, turning vulnerability into manipulation. For the first time, Martin's charming facade crumbled, revealing anger simmering just beneath the surface. "Is this what our family has become?" he pressed. The room shuddered at his words, shaking the foundations of their lives. They had built their world around loyalty. But whose loyalty truly mattered? As weeks unfolded, boundaries formed like protective walls, separating Leah and Martin from the toxic roots of the hardcourt legacy. Martin began digging into therapy, chipping away at the patterns that enslaved him to his family's ghosts. "I never want to be that weak again," he confessed one night, the intimacy of their bed contrasting with the chaos outside. Leah felt the tears well up, remembering the price they paid for freedom. Through the storm of revelations, they made plans to sell their brownstone. "We need a fresh start," Leah said, determination lighting her eyes. They both craved a home unmarked by Franklin and Joanne's grip. The rain continued its song outside, each drop a reminder of what they were leaving behind. As autumn gave way to winter, Leah and Martin began to weave their relationship anew. Honesty and equal partnership slowly stitched together the trust that had been shattered, one heart-wrenching conversation at a time. "What really matters, Leah?" Martin asked, his voice a whisper in the dark. She smiled, knowing they had survived the tempest together. They might not yet have all the answers, but at last they were on their own path, a path not defined by the expectations of others, but by the truth they uncovered together. Steam curled from Leila Monroe's mug as she gazed out at the wintry scene. Snowflakes danced across the lake, creating a mesmerizing swirl of white. The peaceful moment shattered as Martin Ray, her husband, dropped an envelope onto the counter, his voice trembling slightly. "You might want to see this." Inside, wedged between mundane property tax bills, lay a letter from Sandra Knox's estranged daughter, someone Leah had never expected to hear from. But her heart raced as she read. The words didn't plead for sympathy or lay blame. Instead, they recounted dates and events, revealing betrayals Leah thought only she had experienced. Recognition stung like a slap. Her personal narrative was someone else's truth. "Do you believe her?" Martin's voice broke the silence, low and apprehensive. Leah locked her gaze onto him. "I believe she believes it." The air thickened with tension. This family, once bound by tradition, stood on the edge of a precipice. Each revelation twisted familiar bonds tighter, unearthing fears long swept under the rug. Franklin Doyle's rigidity had warped Joanne Pierce's love into a suffocating jealousy, twisting what should have been support into manipulation. Martin's charming exterior began to crack, exposing the simmering anger underneath. "Is this what our family has become?" he asked, his words resonating through the room and shaking the very foundations of their life. This was a family built on loyalty. But whose loyalty mattered most? Weeks turned into a blur of boundary setting, fortifying Leah and Martin against the toxic grip of the hardcourt legacy. Martin sought therapy, peeling away the layers of obligation that had chained him to his family's expectations. "I never want to be that weak again," he confessed one night, the intimacy of their bedroom contrasting sharply with the chaos outside. Leah felt tears prickle her eyes, remembering the cost of their freedom. Through this storm of revelations, they decided to sell their brownstone, yearning for a fresh start. "We need to create our own space," Leah declared, newfound determination igniting her resolve. Outside, rain pitter-pattered against the windows, each drop a reminder of what they were leaving behind. As autumn bled into winter, Leah and Martin began to weave their relationship anew. Honesty and shared vulnerability slowly stitched the tattered fabric of their trust, one heart-wrenching conversation at a time. "What really matters, Leah?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper in the dark. She smiled, a radiant warmth spreading within her. They may not have all the answers yet, but finally they were forging their own path, not defined by the weight of others' expectations, but illuminated by the truth they had uncovered together. "Better than she would have a year ago," he said with a small smile. "She actually said she understood our need for boundaries. I think her therapy is helping." Joanne Pierce's journey toward self-awareness had been one of the more surprising developments of the past year. After decades as Franklin Doyle's perfectly coiffed appendage, she had begun the difficult work of reclaiming her own identity. She had returned to watercolor painting, a passion abandoned in her 20s, and was taking classes at the Art Institute. Franklin Doyle remained largely unchanged, though the events of the past year had diminished his power over the family. When Martin Ray resigned from hardcourt manufacturing, several key clients had followed him to his new consulting firm, creating a significant financial impact. The board of directors had launched an investigation into Franklin Doyle's use of company resources for personal matters, resulting in a formal censure and restrictions on his authority. Most significantly, Martin Ray had legally restructured his inheritance trust with the help of his grandfather's original attorney, removing Franklin Doyle as trustee and eliminating any possibility of acceleration based on his marital status. The company would need to solve its financial issues without using Martin Ray's inheritance as a quick fix. Sandra Knox's transformation had been the most dramatic and unexpected. The exposure of her role in the plot against me had created a minor scandal in their social circle, leaving her temporarily ostracized from the world that had defined her. In the aftermath, she had experienced what she later described as an identity crisis that was probably 30 years overdue. After months of therapy and self-reflection, she had enrolled in graduate school for art history, pursuing a long-abandoned interest from her undergraduate days. Her relationship with Martin Ray had slowly begun to heal. Though she and I maintained a careful distance, our interactions polite but limited. "Do you ever regret it?" Martin Ray asked as we moved to the living room with our coffee, standing up to them that night. It changed everything. I considered the question seriously. "I regret that it was necessary," I said finally. "I regret that things had to get so bad before they could start getting better. But no, I don't regret standing up for myself." For us, Martin Ray had undergone his own transformation. After leaving the family business, he had discovered a talent for helping struggling manufacturing companies modernize their operations. His consulting work allowed him flexible hours and the satisfaction of solving real problems rather than navigating family politics. The reduction in income had been significant, but the increase in his happiness and our relationship quality was immeasurable. "I was thinking about what Dr. Phillips said in our session last week," Martin Ray said, referring to our couple's therapist about how sometimes the most painful betrayals can lead to the greatest growth if we're willing to learn from them. I nodded, remembering the conversation. "It's true. As awful as that night was, I'm not sure we would have ever broken free from the dysfunctional patterns without something that dramatic." Our marriage had emerged stronger through the crisis and subsequent healing work. We communicated more openly, respected each other's boundaries, and made decisions as true partners. The pretense and peacekeeping that had characterized our first 10 years together had been replaced by genuine intimacy and trust. I talked to that real estate agent in Sagatuck. Martin Ray mentioned changing the subject. The storefront on Butler Street is still available if you want to look at it next weekend. Another unexpected development of the past year had been my decision to step back from corporate marketing and open a small design studio focusing on helping local businesses. Leila Monroe's hand trembled as she hovered over the keyboard, the cursor blinking with conspiratorial impatience. Martin Ray paced behind her, his shadow flickering on the sunlit hardwood, a silent battle brewing in his eyes. Nicole's voice crackled through the speaker. Tension floated like static in the air. Would pressing send finally unravel the web, or tighten its grip? The idea had been simmering for years, but Leila had never found the courage to pursue it. Facing down the Harcourts had given her a new perspective on her own strength. "I'd like that," she finally said, her voice steady. Nicole, a steadfast friend through the chaos, chimed in. "I'd be interested in handling the digital security side if we decide to move forward." As the morning sunlight streamed through their windows, Leila reflected on the lessons of the past year. She had learned to trust her instincts when something felt off, rather than dismissing her concerns to keep the peace. Martin had discovered that true family loyalty meant holding loved ones accountable, not enabling harmful behavior. Together, they had unearthed the freedom that comes from setting healthy boundaries and the strength that emerges from facing difficult truths. The irony wasn't lost on Leila. Franklin Doyle's toast to family loyalty had ultimately dismantled the toxic version he had enforced for decades. In its place, Leila and Martin were building something healthier, a partnership rooted in mutual respect, honesty, and genuine support. They had expanded their definition of family beyond blood relations. Friends like Nicole, colleagues who had stood by Leila, even Martin's Aunt Barbara, who had broken ranks to support them, formed a chosen family that nourished rather than depleted them. As they discussed plans for the coming spring, the future felt open with possibilities in a way it never had while orbiting the Harcourt family sun. They were even considering starting a family of their own now that they had done the work to break generational patterns of control and manipulation. But just as hope began to bloom, a message pinged on Leila's phone. It was from Sandra Knox, her sister-in-law. "We need to talk. Secrets are about to come out." Leila's heart raced. What could Sandra Knox possibly want? Would this be the moment everything they had built came crashing down? Rain rattled the windows as Leila Monroe stood in the dim dining room, purse in hand. The scent of wet earth filled the air, mingling with the tension that hung like a thick fog. Martin Ray's laughter faded, replaced by a brittle silence that felt almost suffocating. Suddenly, Leah's sister-in-law, Sandra Knox, broke the stillness, her voice tight with urgency. James didn't go quietly. He left a file. One Franklin Doyle paid him to keep quiet. Every gaze snapped to Franklin, whose flinch revealed a secret deeper than anyone had guessed. The air crackled with possibility, old alliances shifting in the hush before chaos. What had been a family gathering now felt like a powder keg, ready to explode. Leah's heart raced. Could this be the moment everything they had built came crashing down? As the rain drummed against the roof, Leah reflected on the past year. She had learned to trust her instincts, to stand firm in her truth, even when powerful forces tried to undermine it. Betrayal had taught her resilience, revealing the clarity that comes from absolute authenticity. The Harcourts had tried to destroy her, but instead, they had forged her into something unbreakable. "I'm proud of us," Martin said, squeezing her hand, as if he could read her thoughts. "A year ago, I couldn't have imagined being this happy, this free." Leah returned the squeeze, feeling the warmth of their bond. Sometimes, the things that threaten to break us can remake us into something stronger. Have you ever faced down those who tried to tear you apart? How did you find the courage to speak your truth when it felt like the world was against you? Share your story in the comments. And if Leah's journey of betrayal and redemption resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of strength through adversity. Remember, the ones who try to dim your light are often just afraid of how brightly you shine. Rain rattled the windows as Leila Monroe stood in the dim dining room, purse in hand. The scent of wet earth filled the air, mingling with the tension that hung like a thick fog. Martin Ray's laughter faded, replaced by a brittle silence that felt almost suffocating. Suddenly, Leah's sister-in-law, Sandra Knox, broke the stillness, her voice tight with urgency. James didn't go quietly. He left a file. One Franklin Doyle paid him to keep quiet. Every gaze snapped to Franklin, whose flinch revealed a secret deeper than anyone had guessed. The air crackled with possibility, old alliances shifting in the hush before chaos. What had been a family gathering now felt like a powder keg,